Good evening and welcome to My Wednesday, a new podcast from the Wednesday week, where each week we will be talking to Sheffield Wednesday fans who have interesting stories, things to say about the club and their love of everything Sheffield Wednesday. As you have probably picked up already, you'll know my name. I'm Stevie Spence. You'll know my voice. I'm the guy that talks and pontificates about Liam Palmer and Darren Moore to great degrees on a weekly basis, but this week you'll find me sitting behind the host seat, or in the host seat if you like, and I am delighted to welcome onto my very first My Wednesday, Simon Clarke. Evening, Simon.
Hi Steve, you okay? Brilliant intro, mate, well done.
Yeah, at no point behind the scenes or off air have we talked about how nervous I am about doing that link.
Nailed it.
Once we get over it, we get over it. So if anybody's listening, we can fast forward through that bit, and I feel nice and comfortable now. So away we go. Okay, as you'll be aware, the premise of the next sort of 20, 30 minutes or so is just to have a bit of a natter and get a bit of a feel about why we both love Sheffield Wednesday and the sort of the history, why Wednesday, and what it is that's brought us to have that sort of common interest in the club. For those of us that, or for those people that are listening that might not know who you are, do you want to give us a quick intro as to your sort of background, where you're based? Obviously, people listening might recognise there's a certain twang in your accent.
yeah, absolutely. It's not quite South Yorkshire. Born and bred Cardiff, and been a Wednesday fan since '93. Obvious reasons, as you know, it's a hotbed of Wednesday fans down here in South Wales. We'll come on to that after. But yeah, so I love my football, love my sport, love my rugby, and grew up playing football. My first game I went to was the 1991 Welsh Cup final, Cardiff City versus Rill, at the Old Arms Park. Some call it more magical than Disney, but that was my first kind of live introduction. And it's kind of played around with a few teams until then, until the two cup finals in '93, and I was 8. And I vividly remember watching the League Cup final to start with, and obviously we got beat, and I thought, oh, this Sheffield Wednesday team are pretty good. They're always in cup finals. They must be awesome. FA Cup final got beat, and I went, do you know what? That's such a shame. I reckon they're not far off. So started supporting them, and I haven't been able to shake them since. So I always use the League Cup final as kind of the anniversary. So just had my 30-year anniversary. And my God, I had hair, a bit like you probably. You know, it was loads of hair until I started supporting Wednesday. But yeah, that's kind of where it all started, really.
It's incredible to think that you go back to that sort of genesis of your fandom, and we've had 2 cup finals in '93, and they were both against Arsenal, and it could have gone the other way. You could have ended up being a bit of a gooner, to be honest with you. You've come down on the blue and white side then.
I know, and a couple of my pals are all Arsenal fans, and they do say that, and then I quickly flip it round and go, just be glad you won, boys. Just be glad you won, because you could have been on my side.
So, as a kid, sort of growing up in Cardiff, did you get many opportunities to get yourself up to Sheffield? What was the first sort of pilgrimage, if you like, to getting up here? What was
so? Yeah, I'm super lucky with my parents at the time. I say at the time, they're still my parents now. And my father, big into his sport, so he was very much right. Where do we need to go? And we went up. The first time I went up was the summer of '94. So my mother's from Scunthorpe, my grandparents lived in Scunthorpe, so not a million miles away. And we'd go over in the summer holidays, go to the old shop under the grandstand was my first experience. And I think it was then, yeah. And I always remember Andy Sinton walking out of the grandstand, and my mother going, "Is that a player? Is that a player?" I was like, oh my God, don't do that. So she made me go over, and I got a photo with Andy Sinton tucked away somewhere. And I went in, and when I went in to typical kids, like I know your Molly's into it now, which is great, and my boy Reg will be the same whether he likes it or not. Is you go in and get the kit. So I had my first kit that year, and Chris Bart Williams was the first kind of player for me who I was like, right, that's it. He's my favourite player. And I went in and they had the shirts for the weekend behind the desk. And they said, oh, you want Bart Williams? Bearing in mind, I was 9 at this point. And they said, oh, yeah, bit of a problem. Like, he has like a double XL to get Bart Williams on his back. I mean, he was never exactly a big lad, was he? But so what the kids are having is Bartman. So I was, oh, yeah, right. There we are. Bartman. Get it on there. Number 14. Do it. So that was amazing. And the first game I went to was the Tottenham game. It was Klinsmann's for the infamous Klinsmann dive and first game. And that was my first ever game up at Hillsborough. Again, my father took me, and
in that one, wouldn't it?
yeah, exactly. Yeah, you watch the World Cup and you kind of think, God, there's some players there, and suddenly you're in this environment, which is, for me at the time was miles and miles and miles away from home. And I've never looked back. Never looked back. And I don't know why. People ask me all the time. I was going to say I'm famous around here. I'm not famous at all. That's totally the wrong phrase. But as you could imagine, there's not that many Wednesday fans around Cardiff and Penarth. So, people know me as the Wednesday fan, and they keep an eye out for the results, which is nice. So there's almost we've got like a group of Wednesdayites by default, which is nice. So 30 years on, yeah.
What was so as a kid, sort of 93, 94? I don't know. I mean, I've got a recollection of Chris Bart Williams. We went through a phase, didn't we, where initially they talk about having the names on the back, and you pay by the letter, and then we'd have that phase where you could just it was almost like a registration plate that you put on the back of the shirt, didn't it?
Exactly.
Full name across it would have saved a little bit of money, but we talked about a couple of players there, Bart Williams and Sinton. I mean, we can argue whether or not we think that Andy Sinton was any sort of a player for us when you
yeah, exactly. I know. Is he a player? I don't know.
Who was in that sort of formative phase then? Who were some of the more sort of memorable, other than those two, the memorable players that you sort of you hark back and look at?
Well, I mean, there's quite a few that from that kind of generation, but I'll start at the top because it can only go one way. Then I will fight anyone in this world if they disagree that Kevin Pressman should ever have played for England. I mean, he was unbelievable. He was my, I'm sure listeners will know, Sully Colts under 11s players player and managers player of the year in goals, and he was my idol. That penalty against Wolves is just like amazing. So he for me was just the best. And I think you look at the defence. I mean, I'm not going to go the whole compare the side we've got now compared to them at all, but you kind of look at the back four we had then, the likes of Peter Atherton, Ian Nolan, Des Walker, Dan Petrescu was there at the time as well, and then of course being Welsh, Mark Pembridge as well. So I went to Mark Pembridge's testimonial at Merthyr Tydfil at Penydarren Park. It was just the most random thing ever. I was poorly one day in school. My old man said, right, he's having his testimonial up the road in Penydarren Park. Let's get up there. Oh yeah, right, Dad, yeah. I can't remember what year it was, but I was 10 or 11, something like that. So Pembridge was a big thing for me at any time, which is why I loved it when Will Vogt signed now. Any Welsh player that just signs for Wednesday, right? He's immediately my favourite. But we had a great side then, didn't we? There was a lot with the likes of Paul Warhurst, David Hurst, obviously Waddle. I remember random players like Graham Hyde and like Andy Pearce and Lee Briscoe, and just Andy Booth, Gordon Watson. I mean, he's not random, but yeah, just a really interesting side. And I don't know if this is just me being weird and why maybe the Wednesday bit, but then the likes of like Orlando Trustful, Nicholas Alexanderson, these sorts of players coming in, and I'm like, who even are they? How do you even remember them? Like, what is going on? And I always remember Wim Jonk. I had the orange away shirt with Wim Jonk on number 4 on the back, because I just thought, hang on a minute, how have we just signed this Dutch international who was like class at the World Cup? This is brilliant. This is amazing. So yeah, we just have these random kind of connections and associations, don't we? Really, and
the Vim Young one was absolutely incredible because I can remember as a kid I used to buy all the football magazines. Then we get to sort of 94, 95, and I can I'm sure it was around about that era. There was a poster on a magazine called 90 Minutes, and when he was
90 Minutes
into Milan, I think it was, they had a feature where they'd have a poster and a little bit of a blurb, and the main thing at the time was it must have been earlier than 95 actually. The main image at the time that I can remember is him and Dennis Bergkamp, and at that point Dennis Bergkamp had just blown up. It was around about that time for Arsenal, I'm sure it was, and then his best mate pitched up at Sheffield Wednesday. And how the bloody hell have we done this? So we went through that phase. You've mentioned some names there, Petrescu, international standard, Wes Walker, going back to some of the other names that you'd think that are a little bit more obscure. Obviously, whether people think it's a good feature or a bad feature at the moment on the podcast, we're doing a lot of nostalgic looking back on players from years gone by. And it's incredible to think how many games Mark Pembridge actually played for Sheffield Wednesday.
I know.
Games Graham Hyde played. They're so far up in terms of the Premiership games that they played. And it's, when you come out of the mid-90s or the early 90s, the sort of 93 phase, when we had that sort of midfield of Bart Williams, we had Palmer, we had Sheridan. Coming out of it the other side, with due respect to these players that we look back on now that we're really, really fond of, they didn't win a cup. And they didn't get to work with us, and you kind of felt, me being a little bit older, it might have been a bit different than it might have been for you just coming into it. But I was still at school, but coming towards the end of my time, and I was thinking, God, I remember when Sheridan was putting it in the top corner. I remember when David Hurst was smashing him in, and sort of players. But I think we were spoiled in the early 90s, and we've said this a lot. We were really spoiled with those cup runs. We were really spoiled with the level of talent that we had in that squad. And I think, we needed to be careful what we wish for in many cases.
I think there was. I think it was one of the recent pods you guys did. I can't remember which one. Apologies, but talk about Waddle. Waddle came up at the end of his Wednesday career, and he was there just as I was getting into it. And so I don't remember. I remember that Chris Waddle played for Sheffield Wednesday. I don't remember him playing. I don't remember that game he had. I think it was against Villa or West Ham. West Ham. Yeah, I don't remember that. I know it was a thing. So coming in at 93 and the Arsenal games, 91 wasn't a thing for me then, which is interesting. And I only picked that up a number of years later, reading books or following up and having conversations, going, oh yeah, we did win a cup actually. Oh yeah, right. Yeah, it's interesting. I was watching blooming real Cardiff City in the Welsh FA Cup final that year at the Old Arms Park. It's a bit different. but yeah, it's and people always ask me, but you're a Cardiff boy, do you not follow Cardiff City? Is that something? And yeah, I grew up going to watch City, and my father follows City and what have you. And I would class myself as one of those really annoying people that does have kind of two teams, Wednesday by far, but I have got a very, very, very soft spot for Cardiff as well. I don't at the minute, obviously, where they took McGuinness back. I mean, I've just binned them all off. Like I've sent a few letters to the boys. My name down at the Cardiff City Stadium is mud as we speak, but that's fine. And I can't remember. I think it was the first time we played each other in the Championship. Whether was it 06 or 07, something like that. And Wednesday won. And I vividly remember I was at the rugby club and I was following the scores, and I was happier that Wednesday won than I was bothered that Cardiff lost. And it was like, if there was any doubt before, like 100% Wednesday are without doubt my first team, without doubt. Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah. So as a kid, we found our club where it's 93. We're in that sort of Premiership era. If you're anything like me, you talked about going up to the club shop. What were some of the most iconic football shirts, Sheffield Wednesday shirts of your childhood? What's the one that sticks out? Because it's interesting.
Now we're talking. Again, I was so lucky, like with my parents. I had a couple of kits, and I think I'm trying not to do that really annoying thing where I'm like going over in my head. I'm just going to nail my colours to the mast. I'll go one outfield and one keeper kit. like the orange away kit for me was the black and white striped socks. It was ridiculous. Whoever thought that would be acceptable in a product meeting? Like, I'm just like, boys, what are you doing? At the same time, it's the best thing ever. And I am desperate to get that shirt back. Again, I'm so annoyed because this whole classic kits thing is obviously coming back now, isn't it? And everyone loves
Yeah.
it. And don't get me wrong, not that I expect a 11-year-old shirt to fit me now at a slightly larger size, but I wish I'd kept them all. But then the orange away kit for me was definitely one of them. And I think any of the keeper kits. I mean, I sent you a couple of photos like earlier, didn't I? And that just a plain yellow one with the round neck. What would that have been? Sort of 97, 98, something like that. That for me, I started really getting into playing football as well then, and being in goals and being a Kev Pressman fan. That's the one for me that I remember. But then you can't go wrong with the ones before it, can you? Those ridiculous yellow and black and blue and the grey and the black and that horrifically brilliant purple and green and whatever other colours. It looks like Elmer's like chucked himself at a football shirt. Like, so those three kind of goalkeeper kits and that orange away shirt for me, I think you can't really go wrong, can you?
Yeah, it's. I don't know. I'm a bit like you. There's only with due respect to Sheffield Wednesday. There's only so much you can do with a blue and white stripe. So my kits, the kits that I tend to go for are the away kits, and the two standouts for me, my two favourite kits of all time. And this is my hill to die on. The number one, the grey fin looks from the late '80s with the purple.
Oh yeah,
That's
nice.
If again, I don't know when this is going out, but if it goes out in time for us to be winning a league, the last game of the season, we're at Derby County and they're doing a guard of honour, I will be wearing a grey Finlook shirt.
Amazing.
100%. And the other one is the one from the year after the green and white hoops. So they're my two favourite shirts. I think they've stood the test of time. At the time, people thought they were a little bit garish, I suppose, but like you, the classic and the retro stuff that comes back. Give me a decent retro shirt like that over some of the new stuff any day of the week, to be honest with you.
I imagine, as you say, back then they would have been so far away from the norm or what's expected of a traditional football shirt. They're bringing them out and going, what are they all about? Who the traditionalists would have gone, nah, you're all right. And I love the fact you've gone, nope, I'm embracing that. That is superb. Oh yeah, I love it. Because you've got the hat. Is it the green and white, the bobble hat? Yeah.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Those colours, that sort of not hark back to that era is the stuff that really resonates with me. Possibly because that's when I first started getting into football, and you've got those memories of being a kid and going onto the court. I mean, you talked about Tottenham being your first game. My first game was '86. Liverpool, between Christmas and New Year. It was Liverpool at home in '86. We were on the south, and we ended up losing late 1-0. But I was caught. I'd had it. That was me. I've never been in an arena or an environment where there was so many people in one spot, and you just go out. And as a kid, I was, I don't think I was 10 at the time. It was the noise and all these people and just everything that was all about it was something that I'd never experienced before. And as soon as we walked out, got in the car, I looked at each other. Me and my sister kind of went, "We need to do that again."
Amazing. I'm really. Sorry, carry on. Sorry.
To say that was it. That's it. That was my memory of sort of getting the book. So
those kind of comments about the noise and the atmosphere. I'd love to get onto that in a minute. But just how did you get into it? So you mentioned obviously you went with your sister as well. I know you still go now together, which is wicked. So what was it a family thing, or how did you get into that first game against Liverpool?
So essentially, I'll drop a little one in here. I was a swimmer before I was a football fan.
Okay.
And back in the day, there was no such thing as Sky. You didn't get the whole TV sort of thing. And I was on my way to a swimming gala, in 1986. And on the radio, it was the FA Cup final. It was Liverpool-Everton.
Right, okay.
I'm not from a footballing background. I'm not from a sporting background. My dad was a boxer. My mum had no interest in football, but we had a family member who was a huge Sheffield Wednesday fan. And he'd go to the games all the time, but I was too young to understand where he was going. Disappear on a Saturday afternoon.
Okay.
And you're just a kid sort of thing. I'd listened to the FA Cup final and had become a little bit of a fanboy for Liverpool. And then they signed John Barnes, and that was it. But in between that, sort of late '86, knowing that Liverpool were coming to Sheffield, I wanted to go. And over time, over the next sort of 6 months or so, 18 months, whatever it may have been, I started going to Sheffield Wednesday more than I did Liverpool. And I had no real to Liverpool. And it was just, it bled into me. So from the age of about 11, 12 years old, I was an absolute Sheffield Wednesday fan. But, you know, in the time before that, I just wanted to get into football, wanted to experience it, wanted to know what was going on. But it kind of evolved from there and got season tickets in the round about the time you started watching, be around about the time I got my season tickets. But as a player, I didn't manage to get to the games in the sort of the 2000s. So I've missed being on the Cop or the South or the North for a lot of the shit times when, you know, in the Championship and then going down. It's only latterly in the last few years that I've been able to get there regularly because of my own commitments. But, you know, it's a different phase in my life now. And it's something I really, really enjoy. And obviously anybody listening now will know that my Saturdays, my days, my weeks are built around spending time with my daughters and my friends, chasing this dream that one day Sheffield Wednesday will be back in the Premier League, and we'll be around to see it, and my kids will be going to the games like we did as kids. So yeah, it's been a journey.
and you've got that man over your right shoulder to thank for it.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Was he playing that day? Was he playing that game?
Oh no, he didn't sign until the year after.
So he didn't. Oh no.
He's up there. It's weird. I have a footballing sort of a list of footballers that I hold really dear to my heart for various reasons. He's on there. Thierry Henry's on there, but the rest of them are Waddles, your Walkers, Liam Palm, just for longevity.
Embrace it. Yeah.
You know, David Hurst, the first player that I'm old enough to remember, Daly and Atkinson. Those periods were, you know, the glory days, if you like, of going back into the early 90s were absolutely phenomenal for me. So, you know,
brilliant. Such a great story. Do you get the chance to tell that story much? Or
no, I was without name dropping. I was in the program for one of the games earlier on this season. I did a feature on the program, but I've not really told that story too much before, so it's a bit
brilliant.
Yeah,
that's what it's about.
It is. But I've got loads of. Obviously, I get there a lot more frequently than I imagine than you do. I've got loads of games that I consider really memorable games. What would you say is your most memorable game as a fan?
In general, or sort of home or away, or just a bit of everything, really?
The one that sticks out. If I were to, you've nailed the colours to the mast with a kit. So, right, the game that you'll always go back to and say, this was a game that I saw on TV that changed things up, or we won something, or whatever it may be. What's the game that sticks out for you the most?
You know what? I again, probably like you, there's half a dozen I could think of right now that were great for various reasons. But the Brighton semi-final in the playoffs, like, I was with my old man. Me and my old man went up, and we were in the south at the top. And whatever people think about torches and all that, and during a game, you know, we're not going to get into that now. But when Kieran Lee scored that second goal, and then the whole place just lit up, and some of those photos and the atmosphere and just this feeling around, it's a bit like Nam, innit? You know, if you don't know if you weren't there, there was just this feeling of, oh right, we're actually really good at football, and there's the best part of 35,000 people here who all feel the same thing. And I remember my dad, my old man, you know, he's 65, he's 40 years a criminal defence lawyer, built his own company, you know, he's rugby through and through. And he just went, yeah, this is pretty special, isn't it? There's something special about this. And yeah, I think, again, I could give a couple of great experiences, but that's the one. I mean, the playoff final was great. We all talk about it, even though we lost. Like, it was mega to be there. Wednesday fans with great voice. It was just ridiculous. We were so lucky to be in the kind of almost a halfway line, so you could look at the blue and white one side and then the red seats on the other side, and it was let it go, Simon, let it go, It's all right, it's gone. That was great. Though I was talking to my wife on the way down, on the way down, on the way up the stairs, really. Macclesfield away in the cup, 2014. Dragged my best pal up there. He's like, "What are we doing here? What's going on?" Absolutely freezing, just the worst conditions. Got there, couldn't find a pub. The only pub we could find was full of Wednesdayites. Couldn't get a drink. Went outside. There's a bargain booze just down the road. Even the police are saying, "Go get a couple of cans, lads. Take them outside the pub. And you'll be fine. Don't worry about it." Obviously, 0-0. 4.5 hours up there. 4.5 hours back. Just what are we thinking? Burnley as well. What was it? 2015. Yeah, Burnley away. I went up on my own, 5 hours up there. I literally walked into Turf Moor at 3 o'clock, bang on. Walked in, went to the toilet, walked down the stairs, 1-0 down. We've got Wednesday fans fighting each other. Couldn't get a programme, lovely programmes. Couldn't get a pint. Absolutely horrendous. 5 hours back, got beat 3-1. And it's like...
dreams are made of.
It's magical, isn't it? And of course, the one from, it is. It's just ridiculous. The one from this season, of course, we had a good few messages about Peterborough. I haven't had a Red Bull since. Like, just getting in the car outside my house in Cardiff at 2 o'clock going, "Oh, I'll be all right. Oh, this would be a great story." It's not until you're in the car at 10 o'clock at night, having got beat 2-0, 10 men, absolutely drenched. You've had someone throw a pint all over you by mistake, but they've had a lovely time. You haven't. You've had 4 cans of Red Bull where you're sitting there questioning your life going, Peterborough's really far away from everywhere. And then at 2 in the morning, I think we're probably sending messages back and forth on Twitter going, "You've got back. That's right, Rob, because you had to go to London as well. And we had a who's done the most miles today then?" And you went, "Oh yeah, you've nailed it. You've nailed that." And of course, people go, "Will you do it again?" Yeah. Really? Yeah, I will.
It's what the club does to you, isn't it? This is more about you than it is me. But I could list loads and loads of, the similar sort of stories. Fleetwood last year,
okay.
Ended up getting rearranged, didn't it? And I ended up going all the way up on my own because my mate couldn't make it because he was working, and it just so happened that I took the hit. I bought the tickets I'd actually got the tickets from Ash.
Right.
You know what? I'm going with it, and I got in the car. 5 o'clock, whatever time it was. I've sped up the motorway. I've pulled up. Luckily, you can park quite easily at Fleetwood. Walk straight into the ground. It was like walking into a working men's club because it literally is a sport and social that we built on. You go through, on the end of the street, you're walking in there. The social's still under the stand. They built a stand in front of the old stand. And you could lgoing, it's like standing behind on an old terrace on a non-league ground. It was absolutely incredible. Got in the car on the way back, thought I'm going to ring the wife and just explain that I'm on my way home. So I'm driving through, hits this roundabout, there's a couple of roundabouts going out of Fleetwood, hits this roundabout, and just out the corner of my eye, I could see these lights glaring, and it's sort of 10:30, 11:15. School night as well, I'm working the next day.
Yeah, that's the other thing.
Blackpool Tower. So I'm looking at Blackpool Tower in the distance, thinking to myself, I've got to drive to get home on a school night, on a Tuesday night. It's not even a Thursday, it's Friday the next day. And then I'm straight back into work at sort of 7 o'clock the next morning. It's just, those evenings are the ones that live long in your memory, though, aren't they? They're the ones that you do it for. So.
And you know what? It's like, don't get me wrong, like you and everybody else, I am desperate to get out of this league. Like, I'm really desperate. But I'm so lucky. We've still got around me. We've got Bristol Rovers, Forest Green, Cheltenham, and I think there's another one I can't quite remember, like away to play, which I can get to easily.
Yeah.
And you've got a proper grounds, and it's good people. And because I unsurprisingly tend to go on my own quite a bit when I go away. Funny that, isn't it? I don't know. I can't drag anyone down with me. I'm that really annoying person who goes, right, let's start making friends. And you just chat. I went down to Exeter, and we just got chatting to a guy in his his lad, and he's like, "Oh, where are you from then? Oh, you're from Wales, are you? What are you doing here then? Oh, funny story. Are you sitting comfortably?" And you get into it, and it's like brilliant, and you get to hear where they're from. And this lad's 11. He's got a bit like Molly, he's got the hat, he's got the scarf, he's got his Exeter shirt on. Gillingham away, Gillingham away. My God, I like. I've done it. I'm never going back to that place again. The amount of Wednesday fans bouncing up and down on that scaffolding. Jesus, like, but hey, what a story! And you
Yeah,
just do it, don't you?
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
interested to ask. Excuse me. Sorry, because there's another bit about that belonging and that atmosphere and that kind of togetherness I'd love to chat about with you. But like Molly, obviously your daughter's getting into it now, and I'm hoping, I've got a 3.5-year-old Reggie, who I will support to do whatever he wants in his life, as long as he's a Wednesday fan. Like, he can do whatever he wants. We'll never be disappointed, will he? Like, it's managing expectations. What was it for you? Like that connection, obviously, for you and Molly, now she's playing as well. But that first experience, that first day where she went, "Dad, can I come? Can I come watch Wednesday with you?" Like,
I
as
think,
a dad, what was that like?
yeah, it's incredible, and it's evolved from that. And I'm very much I'm absolutely unapologetic for the fact that I spend my days with my little one, and our Saturday
Yeah,
routine is absolutely,
quite
up,
rightly.
coffee in the morning, get her to a game. She's absolutely convinced that she's going to be a pro footballer. I'm absolutely convinced that talk about managing your expectations. She first and foremost, she enjoys playing football.
Mm,
Then we'll come back. We'll get ourselves ready. We're around Kellen for a
nice.
beer or a bit of lunch or whatever, and then we're into the ground with our friends, sort of thing. But that's why we do it. That's you can listen to sort of the self help sort of stuff, and you can do all the reading and the research. And if you are looking at developing an organisation, looking at developing something, you always start with the why. It's that Sinex stuff, isn't it? You always start. What's your purpose?
Absolutely.
For me, you're looking at things that are happening in your life. What more do you want than to spend time with family and loved ones watching something that you're really,
Yeah.
really passionate about? And that's where it's grown from. It was actually the other one. My
Okay.
other daughter was the Wednesday fan because she just wanted to spend time with me. So when we got season
Oh
tickets,
wow, I didn't realise that. Oh, okay.
yeah, we got the ticket for the other one, but she started doing gymnastics to a really decent standard. So we just
Right.
had this spare ticket. So one week we've just gone, right, Molly, do you want to come along and spend some time? She said no. I, I do not want to do that, Daddy. Um,
Thanks for
Molly,
asking, but no.
yeah, but Molly, if you come along, I'll tell you what we'll do, and I'll tell you probably the first memory of it, from a nostalgic point of view. And anybody watching, listening, I'm sure we'll have similar sort of sentiments. We parked up way down Penistone, so just as you come away from
Yeah.
where the car dealerships are, we parked on that little road on this day. We've walked past New Barracks, and I've said, do you know what, Molly? If you come today, I'll take you for McDonald's. And we went into McDonald's, and she sat and she had a grown-up McDonald's meal. We walked into the ground, bought her a drink, sat her down. She watched the first 15, 20 minutes and then went, Daddy, I'm bored now. Can I get my iPad out? So she got her iPad out. Um, she's sort of late 6, early 7 at the time. Literally within 4 weeks of doing that, it was, I don't need my iPad anymore. I'm not taking my bag. She actually,
Really?
she
Wow.
actually takes the bag now and a notepad, and she sits and writes the scores down as we go.
No
So
way.
she'll tell herself a little story. I think we're going to do this today, and I think Liam Palmer, Michael Smith, and Barry Bannon are going to score all the goals. Um, you
How
know,
cool is that? In for the space of 4 weeks, that was the transformation. That's amazing.
yeah,
And what a lovely thing.
it was like that. It helped. Other things that have helped with me is sharing those experiences that we've talked about, those away days, MK Dons on a Saturday night. We were lucky enough to get tickets and stay in the hotel.
Yeah, that's cool.
Now that was a weekend away where we just spent our time together. She was at Peterborough with me, so she'll remember
Oh,
that.
wicked. Yeah.
So those memories around the day itself, that's how it started, and it just evolved from there. So she's fully invested now. She's already thinking about next season, and I catch her doing bits now that I don't notice. So she knows who Ronaldo is. She'll talk about Rainbow
Oh,
Flick. She'll talk
Amazing.
about she's talking about Harry Kane at the moment, and I've never had a conversation with her about any of these things, but she's picking it up, whether that be in the playground, whether that be online, however it is that she's doing it. She's doing it. So
Yeah,
yeah, they're just the
that's
memories
so
for me.
cool.
Yeah. Okay, so we've gone long. We've gone 35 minutes. Got a couple more questions. I just want to throw your way, if that's all right.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Your biggest heartache? What's the biggest disappointment? Not just being a Wednesday fan in itself, but what's the biggest heartache you've ever experienced as a Wednesday fan?
I mean, the obvious one is Hull, obviously, and I think there's no other obvious ones really that jump out. I think there's a lot of shoulda, woulda, couldas. I mean, we were good enough that day anyway, were we? You know, it was. I always felt it was just one game too far for us. I mean, the two semi-final, the legs, just we were exceptional across the. Well, unlucky in the second leg. Yeah, I think I could probably agonise over a lot more, but it's got to be Hull, and yeah, I'll go with that one.
Yeah, I can remember. Just quick story on the Hull one. Very quick story. We came out and we found a pub. Real Madrid were playing in the Champions League final that night,
Yeah,
and we outnumbered the Hull fans in the ground. But afterwards, we'd gone into a pub, and the Wednesday fans took over the pub that the Hull fans were celebrating in. All good natured, but within half an hour of us getting in there, the Hull fans had just got promoted to the Premier League, which were singing Sheffield Wednesday songs.
oh, really?
I've got videos on my phone of those sort of moments. So even though it was a big disappointment, and even though we had that heartache, I think at the time there was a feeling that we weren't a million miles away, and there was that opportunity that we were going to get up the next season, and we came close. So we thought we were going to we'd get there. So it was never quite right. If anything, in that second season, it was never quite right. If anything, I'd argue on another podcast at another time that success probably came a little bit too quickly for Carlos, and certainly for Chansiri, because he then went chasing a dream, didn't he?
Yeah, totally.
That's why we find ourselves where we are at the moment. So, but yeah.
Definitely.
Okay, last one, and you don't know that this is coming.
Oh.
I want you to throw me your ultimate Sheffield Wednesday five-a-side team.
Oh,
Can be
my
from
word.
any era, any position. Give me your best. If you're putting out a five-a-side team to compete, who are your 5 players?
Is it acceptable to have 5 Kevin Pressmans? Or if I've got 2, I'll have 1 in goals and I'll have 1 up front.
Take
Yeah. Right, I'm having Kevin goals. Done. Thanks very much. See you later. And this is in no particular order because my brain doesn't work that way. I've got to have Bannon. I've got to. And I've got to have my second favourite Wednesday player ever is Hutch.
Okay.
He's a wonderful looking man anyway. And I just think the commitment, just whenever he was fit, coming back to Wednesday, just everything he put on the pitch for me. And of course, we can always be cynical and we can look at, oh God, he made the mistake in that Sunderland first leg and blah, blah, blah. But don't worry about that. Just he always gave 100%. And I think that's all you really want from a player, isn't it, really? And I think in five-a-side, he just whined people up, wouldn't he? And I just think that's brilliant. So I'd have Bannon, Hutch, Kev. God, I've never done this. This is wonderful and really annoying at the same time. I think I'd have to go with. I can't get Des Walker out my head, but you don't need the pace. Like you just don't need it. I tell you what, we'll have Kieran Lee, a fully fit Kieran Lee, mind. And I just think he'd be useful as well. Whatever Barry does, he'll do, and then vice versa. I could see them working together. And I'm going to have. How many have I got? Is that 4?
4, you've got Pressman Ban and Lee Hutch.
Yeah, and I'm going to have. Do you know what? Ridiculous. You don't need the height, but I'm going Big Dave. I'm having you up front, just doing it. I think he'll put people off. I think people will just be like, "Who is that? It's 5-a-side. We're not playing overhead height. What's the point?
What are you doing?
What are you doing?" I'm going to cause chaos. I'm going to cause absolute chaos. And then when we're 1-1, we need a goal. We've got 2 minutes to go. We can see the buzzers going off. I'm going to swap him and Kev. Kev goes up front, penalty, 2-1. Thanks very much. Done.
Quality. That's a hell of a 5-a-side team.
Yeah. There is just, I know, I'm conscious of time, and I know there is just one more thing I wanted to chat about, if that's all right.
Sure, absolutely.
Like we talked earlier, and this is kind of like how we've linked up, really, on Twitter and stuff like that, because it's like the whole well-being and mental health thing, and just looking after ourselves and all that sort of stuff. So, you know, I'm not on Twitter personally. I'm through kind of a business I set up, Speakeasy Club, which we've chatted about, and you know, sport's my background. I've worked in sport for 13 years in national governing bodies, and I took a break. I had my challenges with depression and severe anxiety, and when I was kind of signed off, there was this whole conversation on therapy about what are you missing? Like, what's that? Is there something? I mean, there's loads of stuff, but I'm paraphrasing, and it was the connection to something bigger than you. And I'm not religious at all. Never have been. You know, never will be. But there's this connection to something bigger than you. And for me, that is Wednesday. And for me, it's this like, and you don't realize it at the time. And the boys used to take the mick out of me. I'd go in the rugby club for a pint after work, and I'd be in full, like, I'd have this hoodie on, I'd have all the training kit on, I'd be buying t-shirts left, right, and centre. You know, I was buying stupid like blankets and spending a fortune. Then got this diagnosis around the depression. Why was I crying all the time? Why couldn't I do anything? Why couldn't I concentrate? And I mentioned this to my therapist, like early on in the kind of diagnosis phase. And she went, right, it's a bit of a safety blanket, isn't it? I said, well, what do you mean? She went, well, how long have you supported this football team? I said, well, you know, coming up sort of 28, 29 years. She went, oh, right. And is there a pattern of when you like feel particularly low or like really sad or you're really struggling? I went, actually, yeah, I'll walk around the house or I'll go out. I've always got training shorts on or hoodie, or I'm buying loads of stuff in the club shop. Like Chancery loves me because I've just paid a fortune. Right. That's your comfort blanket. That is what you do. This team, this club, this community is basically what keeps you safe, and it's what you enjoy, and it's what you really connect to for whatever reason. We can get on to why do you connect and how that connection and belonging and what have you. But it really helped me. It really, really, really helped me with the challenges and that sense of community. And I started my business on the back of it, and it's about that shared stuff. And that's what's kind of got people into chatting to me as well locally, is around Wednesday. Why Wednesday? Well, I love going up the 40-foot just off the Harris Road, right, and having a pint in there before the game. And you go in. I used to be on the Cop, you know. I'll go in the north now, you know, and because I don't get it down here. If I was a Cardiff City fan, different story. But because I don't get that, chatting to you today, that's why I was so nervous. Was because I get to talk about me and something I'm passionate about. And when I was going through my challenges, that was the best thing, to put this hoodie on or that blanket or training top or whatever. I felt safe. And that was, I think that's just really, selfishly for me, it's a really important thing.
I think, no, I understand totally where you're coming from. I think one of the things that sort of resonates with me is that we are coming out sort of as a country, as the world is coming out of some of the most challenging times that we've ever faced. And to go to that point where we went into lockdown and, you know, you were stuck, we were restricted in the things that we couldn't do. I'm very lucky that And the story of me being involved in the podcast is definitely one for another time, and it will be something that will come up. And I can't wait to one day tell that story. But
I think we've got our own little podcast story, a little coming here as well, a little side story. But we'll come back to that.
You know, we went into lockdown, and whilst people were tearing their hair out and getting frustrated and really feeling it, I had a community of people around me, not necessarily Sheffield Wednesday directly, but the guys that are involved in this podcast, you know, at the time, Dave, who unfortunately doesn't do the pod anymore. We've got Fudge, there was Ash, Simon, Ben, Vic. You know, there was a core of us that would sit for hours at a time and just chat. And the guys would be sending through graphics, and we did the lockdown lives and stuff like that. We ended up doing a couple of quizzes and so forth. That got me through some really challenging times, and I don't mind admitting that, because when everybody else was sort of twiddling the thumbs and getting frustrated, we had a community within a community, and it was born out of the fact that we all had that common interest, and the common interest is the football club that we follow every week. And I've spoken about that at length in terms of the things that I believe and I feel. As we've said tonight already, I'm passionate about my football club because of what it offers me and what it gives me. There's a conversation for another time about whether or not I actually want us to get into the Premier League and what that will look like. And, you know, it's the ultimate goal, but is it too far in modern day football? You know, will it take away that sort of that tribalism that we feel in terms of the journey of trying to get there? It becomes a different animal when you get to that top table, doesn't it? I totally 100% understand where you're coming from with that.
Yeah, it's so important. The podcast you guys do as well. That was at the time, it was always my outlet, because I'm so far removed as well. It was like, oh my God, I get to sit here and listen to people talking about Wednesday for an hour and then just carry on, which is great. But we don't get it in the papers down here. We don't get it in the clubhouse and that sort of stuff. So yeah, it's just very selfishly, I guess I wanted to take this opportunity just to say thank you to you and the guys for doing it, but also that club and that sense of belonging is it's so much bigger than I think we all acknowledge sometimes. It can be so much more helpful.
No, appreciate that. And I appreciate what you just said there. Thank you very much. Right, before we go, you've mentioned it tonight already. The floor is yours. 30 seconds, 1 minute. Talk to me about Speakeasy Club. Tell the listeners, tell the people that are watching what you're all about, where we can find you on socials.
Right, so one of the things I'm trying to practice is my elevator pitch. So go at Speakeasy Club 1. Just follow us. Basically, it's an online and in-person community. We do events. We create these environments that people can be curious. I think curiosity is such an undervalued and underappreciated thing. You've talked about Simon Clarke already tonight. Totally agree with you. He's amazing. But we just try and normalize some of the tricky conversations. And I think it's important that we don't shine a spotlight on everything that's hard. We sandwich it in between the fun stuff. And I think the more we learn about the fun stuff, the easier it is to learn about the harder stuff. So it's evolving. We're just over sort of a year old. But there's an online community, online clubhouse that I'm developing at the moment. It's going live in April. The Huddle. The Huddle. Yeah. I know, absolutely. Well, you might be getting a text very soon, actually, by the way, as an early adopter, as they say. So yeah, it's just a bit of fun and just ask questions with no judgment.
Brilliant, mate. One more time. What's the Twitter handle?
At Speakeasy Club 1. Brilliant,
mate. Si, 49 minutes minus the edit at the beginning of the show before we go. So we're 20 minutes long. What you'll be doing is nut when he realises how long this is. I think it's been worthwhile. My first foray into hosting. Thank you so much for being my first guest.
Mate, and you've been brilliant. I'm not just saying this, like, all jokes aside, I know you were worried. I think it was really good fun. I really, really enjoyed it. And I hope people enjoy listening to it as well, which I'm sure they will.
Appreciate that, mate.
Top man.
Cheers. Thank you very much. Hello, good evening, and welcome to My Wednesday, which is a new initiative on the. For fuck's sake. I knew that happened. Right. Whoever it is,
What's
if it's Ash or if it's Dan, I'm going from 30 seconds because that was terrible. Sorry.
Balls.
Ghoulies.
Chaps.
Tackle.
Knackers.
Chaise long and armchairs.
Dangleberries.
Manscaped even threw in 2 free gifts to their Performance Package 4.0, the Manscaped Boxers and Shed Travel Bag. Bring your comfort and boxers to another level.
Cojones.
Pebbles.
Gonads.
Plums.
Family jewels. Brass clankers.
The 4th generation trimmer features our cutting-edge ceramic blade to reduce grooming accidents thanks to their advanced skin-safe technology. It's also waterproof and has a 4K LED spotlight if you need a more advanced shave.
Eggs.
Itchy and Scratchy. Mitchell Brothers.
Jewels.
Hanging Brain.
Twin bank robbers.
Chaps. Walnuts.
Gobstoppers.
Gooseberries.
Stabilizers.
The Manscaped 4.0 bundle. It reduces your risk of getting an ingrowing hair, it keeps them clean, it keeps them tidy, and it also increases your chance of fellatio by about 15%. That works out about 2% if you're married. So, you know. Anyway, enter the code TWW20 into the checkout. That's TWW20 into the checkout, and you can get yourself a 20% discount. Not too shabby, eh?
For our European listeners, Velata, Testicular,